Hi, and welcome to Type Talk with your host, Jonah Dempsey. Today we're going to be talking about the objective personality animals. And I'm going to do a really brief one today because it was requested just to kind of have a nice reference. So I figured this can just be a good reference. So the animals, there they are: blast, consume, play, and sleep. These were developed by Dave Superpowers and Shannon Renee as part of the objective personality system. And we're just going to go through one by one and talk about what they are in the hopes this might help people who are learning objective personality and who are perhaps learning their own animal stack. So first we have blast. This can be SITE, SIFE, NITE, or NIFE. And so it's possible that you have this as a lead animal if you're an EJ or an IJ. Those are the only two types that can have lead blast. All types can have blast possibly in the second, third, or fourth slot. Blast is conveying known information with SI or NI and explaining reasons, TE, or importance, FE. Now, it's obviously a lot more than that, but this is a good guideline so that you can see what I'm doing. I'm NITE blasting, so I'm conveying something I already know. I already know the animals. And I will explain why. Like, for instance, if I were to say, the reason only EJs and IJs can have lead blast is because lead blast requires that you have either lead SI or NI or lead TE or FE. If I had FE blast, I might be conveying importance in the sense that I might be, trying to kind of describe things with a certain delivery that makes you either give them a lot of importance or kind of diminishes their importance. And I might also be trying to kind of change your feeling attitude about something. You'll hear FE blasters say, the thing about it is, you really need to know whether this or that, and that thing is, you lean in and you start to go, wow, they're going to tell me something really, really important, or I think of Jacques Sibony, the French psychoanalyst. He's asked questions and he can be so dismissive. I think he's an ENFJ. I'm pretty much positive he's an ENFJ. And with FE blast, you can be so dismissive of something. Someone asked him, they said, isn't it true that psychoanalysts stretch out the treatment? Shouldn't you tell us up front how long the treatment is going to take? And he said, do you ask your tennis instructor how long you'll play tennis for? So that's this FE blast where you're conveying, that's not an important question. What an idiotic question, So TE and FE are both conveying information, but TE will provide the reasons more readily, and FE will convey importance. So, and I start with the verbal explanation, or the verbal kind of examples of these, because those are really easy to notice. When you're in conversation with someone, you can notice when they're blasting, like I'm blasting right now verbally. There's also nonverbal blast, which is goal-oriented concentration. For instance, NITE may problem solve, taking into account constraints and desired outcomes. This was an example that Dave and Shannon gave in one of their readings for an NITE blaster, that he was blasting when he went to the music studio and spent hours and hours mixing down and producing music, because he had that NI process manager with his vision and his goal in mind, and the TE helping him get there and figure out how to realize that goal, and basically the NI and the TE working together. Of course, it's going to look different if it's SITE or SIFE or NIFE, but for consume, now this is going to be TISE, TINE, FISE, or FINE. So this is the opposite in the sense this is an introverted decider, an introverted judging function, either TI or FE, and an extroverted observer, an extroverted perceiving function, either SE or NE. And so it's only possible to be lead consume if you're an EP or an IP. For the same reason, that you need to have either dominant, one of these functions here has to be your lead. And the verbal consume, listening attentively, asking questions, gathering novel data, attracted to a variety of data sources, curious, inquisitive. These are just some of my kind of basic descriptor terms. This is when you're in a conversation with somebody and you're really interested in what they have to say, well, particularly with FI, or you're really attending to what assumptions they're making and what rules they're playing with and what they might not have thought of if it's more TI. And either way, you're kind of really attentive to them. You're not just taking what they say as a leaping off point to go into your SI or your NI and remember something which you then blast at them. That would be blast. If you're having a conversation and you're in blast, they say something and then you go, oh my, that reminds me so much of this thing I just thought of with your SI or your NI, and then you blast that thing it reminded you of to them. With consume, you're actually staying with them and you're asking questions and you're drawing information out of them. And then we have nonverbal consume. So this can be noticing details or patterns in the physical environment, or it could be, music, or it could be anything else. You could be eating a meal and really noticing the taste or the texture with SE, or you can be noticing patterns. You can notice, wow, this is a 3-course meal and every one of the plates had a lot of turmeric in it. So, SE and NE are 2 ways of noticing things externally. And then, of course, you're evaluating them internally, either with FI, which will be this yardstick of authenticity and sincerity and importance to you, or TI with this yardstick of legitimacy and soundness and stuff like that. Consistency, if it's consistent or not. And then we get to play. Play is your double extroverted animal here. It's SETE, SEFE, NETE, or NEFE. So to be lead play, you have to be an EJ or an EP, because you have to have one of these 4 functions as your lead. And the verbal form of play is witty banter, small talk, provoking, teasing, flirting, short statements, then noticing the reaction. Because you see what it's doing, it's an interface function, TE or FE, then it's noticing the reaction with SE or NE. So you're saying something, then you're noticing what's happening, and saying and noticing, and saying and noticing. It's not like blast, where it's just going to keep going and going and going. And it's not like consume, where it's going to keep pulling and pulling and pulling. Play is, it's like both. It's like half and half, kind of. It's provoking. It's saying something to provoke a reaction, then noticing that reaction in a feedback loop. It's fully present and responsive to anything happening in the moment. Now, this is another distinction which I failed to mention. When you're blasting, you're distant. Blast is one of the distant animals, meaning that when I'm blasting to somebody, it's not really like I'm talking to them. I'm kind of just talking at them. I'm distant because I'm going within to my NI. So when you're blasting, you're going to go into your NI or your SI, and you're going to be more distant. And you're going to kind of be remote and removed even while you're talking to them. Play is not like that at all. It is present. And consume is also present. So play and consume have that in common, that they both have extroverted observing functions, SE and NE. So they're both very present with the other person, and they're very reactive or responsive to what happens in the moment. So if I'm lecturing in blast mode and the lights flicker, I ignore it as a distraction. But if someone is in play, they're going to immediately make a comment and go, wow, that was such a, and they're going to kind of riff on that. So play is always looking for things to riff on or to respond to. Kind of the canonical, at least NETE play would be Robin Williams. He's the ENFP who's lead play. And then we have nonverbal play, experimenting. Let's see what happens when I do this. Again, this feedback loop. Let me act and then see the response, and then act and see the response. Using things in their unintended manner. I'm sitting there waiting for my food, and if I go into play, maybe I'm building a castle out of sugar packets and straws. Interacting with the environment as when one is skateboarding. That you're playing with the environment. You're seeing what happens if you go up this thing and you go down that thing. Or dancing like in the opening scene of Baby Driver. If you've seen the movie Baby Driver, that's play. That's an example of nonverbal play. And finally, this brings us to sleep, SITI, SIFI, NITI, or NIFI. And so you can only be an IP or an IJ if you have lead sleep. Those are the only 2 possibilities. Of course, just like the rest of the animals, anyone can have them in slot 2, 3, or 4. Sleep is another one of the remote animals. Blast and sleep are remote on account of having SI or NI. And so sleep is going to be very distant, kind of checked out. And, it's funny because I was trying to think of what is the verbal version of sleep, and I was like, well, you don't really use sleep in conversation. I mean, if you start going into sleep in conversation, which people do, then you're just kind of checking out, and that's something people actually get offended by. It's like, why are you checking out while I'm talking to you? Sometimes it's because the other person said something so profound that you just have to contemplate or reflect on it a little bit. But sleep could be, this is kind of the more verbal side of sleep, mentally rehearsing conversations you're going to have or revisiting conversations you already had. Reflection, rumination, sometimes obsession, or just contemplation. So it's already nonverbal unless you're imagining conversations, but a fully nonverbal would be like daydreaming or active imagination, remembering things that happened, going into a reverie. There doesn't have to be any linguistic component to this at all. It can simply be, going into an internal kind of imaginal space. All right, if you are interested in Objective Personality, please check out objectivepersonality.com, support Dave and Shan, sign up for their class, like their videos, subscribe to their YouTube. I'm not affiliated with them at all. I'm just a big fan of their work. And if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Type Talk with your host, Jonah Dempsey. Thanks.